Sarah Martinez had always been proud of her work at Dataflow Securities, a mid-sized cybersecurity firm in downtown Seattle. For 3 years, she had arrived early, stayed late, and handled the company's client communications with dedication that went far beyond her job description. Her small cubicle in the corner of the office was organized to perfection, with client files sorted by priority and her computer screen always displaying the latest security reports. But on that gray Tuesday morning in March, everything changed. Sarah was called into the conference room, where her supervisor, Mr. Thompson, sat across from 3 other executives she barely knew. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Thompson shuffled through a stack of papers, avoiding eye contact. "Sarah, we've been reviewing our operational efficiency," Thompson began, his voice lacking its usual warmth. "The company is restructuring, and we've determined that your position is no longer essential to our core operations." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had just completed a major client presentation a week before, one that had earned praise from the entire team. Her client satisfaction ratings were among the highest in the department. How could her position suddenly be non-essential? "I don't understand," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Morrison account specifically requested to work with me again. The Chun Industries contract was renewed because of the relationship I built with their team." One of the executives, a woman with silver hair and cold eyes, leaned forward. "We appreciate your contributions, Sarah, but the company is moving in a new direction. We're automating many client communication processes. Your role has become redundant." Sarah's mind raced. She knew the company had been investing in automated systems, but she had been the one training the AI chatbots, feeding them information about client preferences and communication styles. How could they replace her when she was the one making their automation possible? "When?" Sarah asked, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edge of the conference table. "Today will be your last day," Thompson replied. "Human resources will handle your final paperwork and severance package. Security will escort you to clean out your desk." The meeting lasted only 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Sarah walked back to her cubicle in a daze, trying to process what had just happened. Her coworkers avoided eye contact, clearly already aware of what was happening. The security guard, a kind man named Marcus who had always greeted her warmly each morning, now stood nearby with an apologetic expression. As Sarah packed her personal items into a cardboard box, she couldn't help but notice the tattoo on her left wrist. It was a geometric design she had gotten 2 years ago during a weekend trip to Portland with her sister. The tattoo featured interlocking triangles with a small circle in the center, surrounded by precise lines that created an almost technological appearance. Sarah had chosen the design because it reminded her of the network diagram she worked with daily, a perfect blend of art and her passion for technology. "That's an interesting tattoo," Marcus said quietly as he watched her pack. "Very precise design. Almost looks like some kind of technical schematic." Sarah glanced at her wrist. "My sister dared me to get it. She said it looked like something from a spy movie." She managed a weak smile. "Guess it doesn't matter now." The next few weeks blurred together in a haze of job applications and rejection emails. Sarah had saved enough money to cover her expenses for a few months, but the job market for her specific skills was surprisingly tight. Many companies were indeed moving toward automation, making experienced human communicators less valuable. Her apartment, a cozy one-bedroom in Capitol Hill, began to feel like a prison. Sarah spent her days scrolling through job boards, updating her resume, and wondering if she had chosen the wrong career path. The confidence she had built over 3 years at Dataflow Securities was rapidly eroding. During this difficult period, Sarah found herself spending more time with her neighbor, Mrs. Chun, an elderly woman who lived alone and often needed help with grocery shopping or simple repairs. Mrs. Chun had immigrated from Taiwan decades ago and had worked as a translator for various government agencies before retiring. "You have good instincts," Mrs. Chin told Sarah one afternoon as they sat on the building's small balcony, sharing tea. "I can see it in how you solve problems, how you pay attention to details. Some people think they don't need careful people anymore because they have machines. But machines cannot think like humans think." Sarah appreciated the encouragement, but it felt hollow against the reality of her empty inbox and dwindling savings account. Every day brought new evidence that companies preferred automated solutions over human expertise. One evening, while Sarah was researching a potential job lead at a tech startup, she received an unexpected phone call. The number wasn't in her contacts, and she almost let it go to voicemail. "Hello, is this Sarah Martinez?" The voice was professional but unfamiliar. "Yes, this is Sarah." "Ms. Martinez, my name is Director Patricia Hawkins from the Federal Security Communications Division. I understand you recently left Dataflow Securities." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The Federal Security Communications Division wasn't an agency she recognized, but the official tone made her sit up straighter. "Yes, that's correct. We've been reviewing professionals in your field, and your background has come to our attention. Would you be available for a meeting tomorrow afternoon? There's a position that might interest you." Sarah couldn't believe it. After weeks of rejection, a federal agency was calling her directly. "Yes, absolutely. Where should I meet you?" "The federal building downtown, Suite 1247. 2 o'clock. Please bring identification and be prepared to discuss your experience with secure communications protocols." After hanging up, Sarah stared at her phone in disbelief. She had never applied for any federal positions, and she wasn't sure how they had gotten her information. But after weeks of unemployment, she wasn't about to question this opportunity. She spent the rest of the evening researching the Federal Security Communications Division online, but found surprisingly little information. The agency seemed to be involved in protecting government communications infrastructure, but the details were vague. Sarah assumed this was normal for security-related government work. The next day, Sarah dressed in her most professional outfit and arrived at the federal building 15 minutes early. The security process was more thorough than she expected, with multiple ID checks and a metal detector that seemed more sophisticated than typical government building security. Suite 1247 was smaller than she had anticipated, with just a reception area and a single conference room. Director Hawkins turned out to be a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an air of quiet authority. She was accompanied by a younger man introduced only as Agent Rodriguez. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Martinez," Director Hawkins said as they settled into the conference room. "We've reviewed your work at Dataflow Securities, and we're impressed by your attention to detail and your ability to build trust with clients handling sensitive information." Sarah felt a surge of validation. Finally, someone recognized the value of her skills. "Thank you. I enjoyed that work very much. The position we're considering you for involves communication coordination for sensitive operations," Agent Rodriguez explained. "You would be responsible for ensuring that field teams can maintain secure contact with headquarters during various assignments." It sounded perfect. Sarah had experience with secure communication protocols, and the work seemed to match her skills exactly. "That sounds like something I'd be very interested in." Director Hawkins leaned forward. "There is one aspect of the job that might seem unusual. Many of our operations require a high level of discretion. Team members often need to blend into various environments without drawing attention to themselves." Sarah nodded. "I understand the importance of discretion in security work. Part of our evaluation process involves assessing how well candidates can maintain their cover in different situations," Agent Rodriguez continued. "We'd like to start with a simple observation period. You would go about your normal daily routine, but one of our teams would monitor how you handle yourself in public spaces." The request seemed strange, but Sarah reasoned that government agencies probably had unusual hiring processes. After weeks of unemployment, she was willing to accommodate their requirements. "How long would this observation period last?" Sarah asked. "Just a few days," Director Hawkins replied. "We need to see how naturally you behave when you're not aware you're being evaluated. It's important for the type of work we do." Sarah agreed to the terms and left the federal building feeling optimistic for the first time in weeks. As she walked to the bus stop, she noticed her tattoo catching the afternoon sunlight. The geometric pattern seemed to shimmer slightly, and she found herself thinking about Marcus's comment about it looking like a technical schematic. That evening, Sarah called her sister Emma to share the news about the potential job. A federal agency just called you out of the blue?" Emma asked skeptically. "That seems weird, Sarah. How do they even know you were looking for work?" "Maybe Data Flow Securities gave them my information," Sarah replied, though she realized she had never signed any forms authorizing such a reference. Government agencies probably have ways of finding qualified people. "Just be careful," Emma warned, "and make sure you research this agency thoroughly before you commit to anything." Sarah promised to be cautious, but she was too excited about the possibility of meaningful work to pay much attention to her sister's concerns. After weeks of being told she wasn't essential, someone finally valued her skills. Over the next 3 days, Sarah went about her normal routine while presumably being observed by federal agents. She grocery shopped, met friends for coffee, and continued her job search as a backup plan. Sometimes she thought she noticed the same person in different locations, but she couldn't be sure. On Friday afternoon, Director Hawkins called with an update. "Ms. Martinez, we've completed our initial evaluation, and we're very pleased with your natural behavior patterns. However, we need to move to the next phase of assessment." "What does that involve?" Sarah asked. "We'd like you to attend a weekend training session at a facility outside the city. It's an opportunity to meet other potential team members and learn more about our work." The training facility was a 2-hour drive from Seattle, located in what appeared to be a repurposed corporate retreat center. Sarah arrived Friday evening to find 12 other people, all roughly her age, gathered in a comfortable common area. During the orientation meeting, Director Hawkins explained that they were all being considered for various positions within the Federal Security Communications Division. The weekend would involve team exercises, communication challenges, and individual assessments. Sarah found herself enjoying the activities. The other candidates were intelligent and professional, and the exercises reminded her of the problem-solving aspects of her work at Data Flow Securities. She was particularly successful at a challenge involving coordinating information between different teams using only coded messages. On Saturday evening, during a social hour, Sarah was chatting with another candidate named Michael when Agent Rodriguez approached them. "Sarah, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" They stepped outside onto a small patio overlooking a wooded area. The evening air was cool, and Sarah could hear the distant sound of traffic from the highway. "How are you finding the weekend?" Rodriguez asked. "It's been interesting. Very different from corporate training sessions I've attended." Rodriguez nodded. "Sarah, I noticed your tattoo earlier. Could you tell me about it?" Sarah looked down at her wrist, surprised by the question. "It's just something I got with my sister a couple of years ago." "Why?" "The design is quite distinctive. Almost looks like it could be some kind of identification marker." "Identification marker?" Sarah laughed. "It's just decorative. My sister and I saw the design in a tattoo shop in Portland." Rodriguez studied her face carefully. "Do you remember the name of the shop?" "Ink and Steel, I think. On Morrison Street." Sarah was beginning to feel uncomfortable. "Is there a problem with having tattoos in federal work?" "Not at all," Rodriguez replied quickly. "I was just curious about the design. It's very well done." The conversation ended, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just happened. Rodriguez's questions about her tattoo seemed to go beyond casual interest. Sunday morning brought the final assessment activities. Sarah performed well on all the challenges, and Director Hawkins pulled her aside before the other candidates left. "Sarah, we'd like to offer you a position with our team. The work would begin immediately, and we can offer you a salary that's significantly higher than what you were earning at Data Flow Securities." Sarah felt a rush of excitement and relief. "That's wonderful. When would I start?" "Tomorrow, if you're available. We have an urgent communication coordination need for an operation that begins this week." The quick timeline surprised Sarah, but she reasoned that government work often involved urgent situations. "Yes, I'm available." "Excellent. Report to Suite 1247 at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Wear comfortable clothing and bring minimal personal items. You'll be briefed on your specific role once you arrive." As Sarah drove back to Seattle, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Her life was about to change dramatically, and she still didn't fully understand what her new job would entail. But after weeks of feeling unwanted and unnecessary, she was grateful to have found an organization that valued her skills. That evening, as she packed a small bag for what she assumed would be her first day of training, Sarah looked at her tattoo again. Under the bathroom light, the geometric pattern seemed more complex than she remembered, with subtle details that created an almost three-dimensional effect. She thought about Rodriguez's questions and wondered if there was something about the design that she didn't understand. But she dismissed the thought as nervous excitement about starting a new job. After all, it was just a tattoo she had chosen randomly from a wall of designs in a Portland tattoo shop. Sarah set her alarm for 6 a.m. and tried to sleep, unaware that her life was about to intersect with a world far more complex and dangerous than anything she had ever imagined. Sarah arrived at the federal building at exactly 8 a.m., carrying a small backpack with a change of clothes and basic toiletries. The security process seemed even more thorough than her previous visit, with additional scanning equipment that she didn't recognize. Suite 1247 looked different in the morning light. The reception area had been cleared of furniture, and Director Hawkins was waiting with two people Sarah hadn't met before, a tall woman with short blonde hair introduced as Dr. Stevens, and a middle-aged man named Colonel Patterson who wore what appeared to be civilian clothes but carried himself with obvious military bearing. "Sarah, thank you for being prompt," Director Hawkins said. "Before we begin your orientation, we need to complete some additional security procedures." Dr. Stevens stepped forward carrying a tablet and what looked like a high-resolution camera. "We need to document your identifying characteristics for our security database. This includes photographing any tattoos, scars, or other distinguishing marks." Sarah extended her left arm, and Dr. Stevens carefully photographed her tattoo from multiple angles. As the camera focused on the geometric design, Sarah noticed that all three officials exchanged meaningful glances. "Interesting pattern," Dr. Stevens murmured, studying the images on her tablet. "Very precise line work. The proportions are quite specific." Colonel Patterson moved closer to examine the photos. The central circle with the triangular array, and those connecting lines follow a very particular mathematical progression. Sarah began to feel uneasy. "Is there something wrong with my tattoo?" "Not wrong," Director Hawkins said carefully. "But we need to verify something. Sarah, you mentioned getting this tattoo in Portland. Do you remember the exact date?" "September 15th, 2 years ago. It was a Saturday. My sister and I made a weekend trip out of it." Dr. Stevens was typing rapidly on her tablet. September 15th would have been 3 days after the Meridian incident. Colonel Patterson finished quietly. Sarah had never heard of any Meridian incident, but the way the three officials looked at each other made her stomach tighten with anxiety. "What's the Meridian incident?" Director Hawkins gestured for Sarah to sit in one of the remaining chairs. "Sarah, I need to ask you some very specific questions, and it's important that you answer as accurately as possible. Do you remember anything unusual about the tattoo shop where you got this design?" Sarah thought back to that weekend in Portland. She and Emma had been walking down Morrison Street when they passed Ink and Steel. The shop had looked busy, with several artists working on different clients. "Not really. It was pretty standard. My sister dared me to finally get a tattoo, and we saw some designs in the window that caught our attention." "Do you remember the tattoo artist who did your work?" Dr. Stevens asked. "A guy named Jake, I think. He was probably in his 30s, had a lot of tattoos himself. He said the design I chose was new to their collection." Colonel Patterson pulled out his phone and showed Sarah a photograph. "Is this the man who did your tattoo?" Sarah looked at the photo and nodded. "Yes, that's definitely him. How do you have his picture?" The three officials exchanged another series of looks that made Sarah increasingly uncomfortable. Director Hawkins leaned forward in her chair. "Sarah, the man in that photo is Jason Reeves, a former Navy communications specialist who went missing from a classified operation 2 years ago. The operation was code-named Meridian." The room seemed to spin around Sarah. "That's impossible. He was just a tattoo artist. He talked about music and asked if I wanted any modifications to the design." "What kind of modifications did he suggest?" Dr. Stevens asked urgently. "Nothing major. He said he could add some small details that would make the pattern more unique. But I told him I liked it exactly as it was shown in the book. Dr. Stevens showed Sarah her tablet screen, which displayed a detailed analysis of her tattoo photo. Sarah, this design isn't just decorative. It's a highly sophisticated identification marker used by a classified intelligence operation. The mathematical proportions encode specific information about clearance levels and operational assignments. Sarah stared at the tablet in disbelief. That's impossible. I chose it randomly from a book of designs. No, it didn't, Colonel Patterson said gently. Jason Reeves specifically gave you this design. The question is whether he did it intentionally or if something else was happening. Director Hawkins stood and walked to the window. Sarah, Operation Meridian was a deep cover intelligence program designed to protect critical infrastructure from cyber attacks. Team members were identified through various methods, including specific tattoo designs that could be recognized by other operatives. But I'm not an operative, Sarah protested. I'm just a communications coordinator who got fired from a cybersecurity company. That's what we need to figure out, Dr. Stevens said. Sarah, over the past 2 years, have you noticed anyone taking unusual interest in your tattoo? Anyone asking specific questions about it or photographing it? Sarah thought back through the months since getting the tattoo. Marcus at Dataflow Securities mentioned it looked like a technical schematic, and Agent Rodriguez asked about it during the training weekend. But nothing that seemed suspicious. Colonel Patterson was typing on his phone. We need to bring her to the facility immediately. If she's been unknowingly carrying Meridian identification for 2 years, there are serious security implications. What kind of implications? Sarah demanded. I don't understand what's happening here. Director Hawkins turned back to Sarah. The people involved in Operation Meridian had access to some of the most sensitive cybersecurity information in the government. When Jason Reeves disappeared, we assumed he had been compromised by hostile actors. But if he was placing Meridian markers on civilians, he might have been trying to create a backup network, Dr. Stevens finished. People who could be contacted if the primary operation was discovered. Sarah felt like she was drowning in information that made no sense. So, you think this Jason person marked me as some kind of sleeper agent? We don't know, Colonel Patterson admitted. But we need to find out. And we need to do it quickly. Within an hour, Sarah found herself in the back of a black SUV heading east from Seattle. Dr. Stevens rode with her, while Director Hawkins and Colonel Patterson followed in a separate vehicle. The destination was a facility that Dr. Stevens described only as a secure analysis center. As they drove through the Cascade Mountains, Dr. Stevens tried to explain more about Operation Meridian. The program was designed to create a network of deep cover specialists who could maintain critical communications if our primary cybersecurity infrastructure was compromised. Each operative had extensive training and carried identification that looked like normal tattoos or jewelry, but actually contained coded information. How many operatives were there? Sarah asked. 12. Jason Reeves was the communications specialist responsible for maintaining contact protocols between team members. What happened to them? Dr. Stevens hesitated. 8 months ago, we lost contact with the entire Meridian team. All 12 operatives disappeared within a 48-hour period. We assumed they had been captured or eliminated by foreign intelligence services. The facility turned out to be a modern complex nestled in a valley about 3 hours from Seattle. It looked like a corporate campus, but Sarah noticed the sophisticated security measures and the absence of any identifying signs. Inside, Sarah was introduced to Dr. Michael Chun, a specialist in cryptographic analysis who examined her tattoo using equipment that looked more like it belonged in a laboratory than a tattoo parlor. This is definitely authentic Meridian coding, Dr. Chun confirmed after his examination. The base pattern indicates a communications specialist designation, but there are additional elements I've never seen before. What kind of additional elements? Colonel Patterson asked. Dr. Chin highlighted sections of Sarah's tattoo on his computer screen. These micro details weren't part of the original Meridian design specifications. They appear to be coordinates and what might be activation codes. Sarah watched in fascination and growing horror as her simple geometric tattoo was revealed to be an incredibly complex piece of cryptographic art. You're saying this thing on my arm contains secret coordinates? Not just coordinates, Dr. Stevens said, studying Dr. Chen's analysis. If these calculations are correct, your tattoo contains the location of a backup communications facility that we didn't know existed. Over the next several hours, Sarah was subjected to interviews, medical examinations, and psychological evaluations. The staff was professional but intense, clearly operating under significant pressure. During a break between sessions, Sarah was allowed to call her sister Emma. "Sarah, where are you?" Emma demanded as soon as she answered. "I've been trying to reach you all day. I'm at a government facility." "Emma, do you remember anything unusual about that weekend we got tattoos in Portland?" "Unusual how? You mean besides you actually going through with getting a tattoo? Did the tattoo artist say anything strange? Ask any weird questions?" Emma was quiet for a moment. "Now that you mention it, he did seem really interested in where we were from, and he asked if you worked in technology. I thought he was just making conversation, but he seemed to pay a lot of attention to your answers." Sarah felt a chill. Jason Reeves hadn't randomly given her a meridian identification marker. He had specifically chosen her based on her background in cybersecurity communications. When Sarah returned to the interview room, she shared Emma's recollections with the team. Dr. Stevens made notes, while Colonel Patterson paced near the window. "This confirms our suspicion," Director Hawkins said. Jason Reeves was creating a civilian backup network. He identified people with relevant skills and marked them with modified Meridian identifiers. "But why?" Sarah asked. "What was he trying to accomplish?" Dr. Chen looked up from his computer. "I think I can answer that. The coordinates embedded in your tattoo lead to a facility in rural Oregon. Cross-referencing with our intelligence databases, that location was purchased by a shell company 3 days before the Meridian team disappeared. Jason was planning an extraction, Colonel Patterson realized. He knew the team was compromised, so he created a backup network of civilians who could be activated if needed." Sarah's head was spinning. "Activated for what?" "To continue the Meridian mission," Director Hawkins explained. "Protecting critical cybersecurity infrastructure from hostile attacks. But I don't have any special training. I'm just a communications coordinator." Dr. Stevens smiled for the first time since Sarah had met her. "Sarah, you have exactly the skills the Meridian program was designed around. Your work at Dataflow Securities involved coordinating secure communications between clients handling sensitive information. That's precisely what Meridian operatives do, just on a larger scale." Late that evening, as Sarah tried to process everything she had learned, Dr. Chun made another discovery. "The activation codes in Sarah's tattoo appear to be time-sensitive," he announced to the team. "Based on the mathematical progressions, they'll expire in 72 hours. "Expire how?" Sarah asked. "The coordinates will become inaccessible. If Jason Reeves set up a backup facility, we only have 3 days to reach it before it automatically locks down." Director Hawkins made a decision that would change Sarah's life forever. "We're going to activate you, Sarah. Tomorrow morning, you'll accompany a team to the coordinates in your tattoo. We need to find out what Jason Reeves was planning and whether any of the other Meridian operatives are still alive." Sarah stared at the team of federal agents surrounding her. 24 hours ago, she had been an unemployed cybersecurity worker told she wasn't essential to any organization. Now she was apparently a key element in a classified intelligence operation. "Do I have a choice?" she asked quietly. Colonel Patterson sat down across from her. "Legally, yes. But, Sarah, if hostile actors discover that you carry Meridian identification, you'll be in serious danger whether you help us or not. Working with us is your best chance of staying safe." Sarah looked at the tattoo on her wrist, the geometric design that had seemed so simple when she chose it in a Portland tattoo shop. Now it represented a world of secrets and dangers she had never imagined. "What exactly would I need to do?" she asked. Dr. Stevens pulled up a map on her tablet. "The facility is located in a remote area of the Cascade Range, about 4 hours south of here. You would accompany a small team to investigate the site and attempt to access whatever systems Jason Reeves established there. Will it be dangerous?" "We don't know," Director Hawkins admitted. "We don't know if the facility is occupied, if it's being watched, or what we'll find there. But your tattoo appears to be the only key we have to accessing it. Sarah thought about her empty apartment in Seattle, her failed job search, and the feeling of being told she wasn't essential to anyone's operations. Here was an opportunity to be part of something important, even if she didn't fully understand what it involved. "When do we leave?" she asked. Colonel Patterson checked his watch. 6 a.m. "We'll brief you on basic security procedures tonight, and you'll travel with Dr. Stevens and a tactical support team." As the team prepared for the next day's mission, Sarah was given a small room where she could rest before what might be the most important day of her life. She sat on the narrow bed, studying her tattoo under the overhead light. The geometric pattern that had once seemed like a simple decoration now appeared infinitely complex. She could see the tiny details that Dr. Chun had identified as coordinates and activation codes, elements so precise they could only have been created by someone with extensive training. Sarah wondered about Jason Reeves and what had driven him to mark random civilians with classified intelligence identifiers. Had he known that the Meridian team was in danger? Was he trying to protect critical information, or was something else happening? Tomorrow, she would find out. Tomorrow, she would discover whether her tattoo was the key to saving a classified operation or walking into a trap that had been 2 years in the making. As Sarah finally drifted off to sleep, her last conscious thought was about the irony of her situation. Dataflow Securities had told her she wasn't essential, but now the federal government was depending on her to access what might be one of the most important facilities in the country's cybersecurity infrastructure. The geometric lines on her wrist seemed to pulse slightly in the dim light, as if responding to her thoughts about the mission ahead. The convoy left the facility at dawn, with Sarah riding in an armored SUV alongside Dr. Stevens and 2 tactical specialists named Agent Martinez and Agent Kim. Colonel Patterson examined the threat assessment data with growing alarm. If these attacks succeed simultaneously, they could cripple the entire western United States. "We need to alert our cybersecurity teams immediately." "That's the problem," Sarah said, pointing to another screen. According to Jason's analysis, the attacks are being coordinated using information that could only come from inside our own cybersecurity agencies. Warning the wrong people would just help the attackers adjust their methods. Dr. Stevens was studying Jason's notes on the infiltration. The evidence here suggests that the mole has access to real-time government response protocols. Every time our teams try to counter these attacks, the attackers seem to know exactly what defenses we're deploying. Sarah found herself thinking like the communications coordinator she had been at Dataflow Securities. What if we don't warn the official agencies? What if we use this facility to coordinate a response directly? Agent Kim looked skeptical. "You want to conduct unauthorized cybersecurity operations against foreign attackers? That's way beyond our authority." "Is it?" Sarah challenged. Jason Reeves created this facility specifically for situations where normal channels are compromised. The Meridian program was designed to protect critical infrastructure when official systems fail. Colonel Patterson was already studying the technical specifications of Jason's communication system. "The equipment here is more advanced than what our current teams are using. We could potentially coordinate counterattacks that the mole wouldn't be able to anticipate." As if responding to their discussion, one of the main displays began flashing red warnings. The power grid attacks were intensifying, and Sarah could see that electrical systems across Oregon and Northern California were beginning to fail. "We don't have time for authorization," Dr. Stevens said grimly. "If we don't act in the next few hours, millions of people could lose power indefinitely." Sarah moved to the primary communications console, her experience with secure protocols suddenly feeling more relevant than ever. "I can coordinate communications between the utility companies and emergency services without going through official government channels. But I'll need help with the technical counterattacks." Agent Martinez had been examining Jason's files on the other civilian assets. According to this information, 2 of the other marked individuals are computer security specialists in Portland and San Francisco. If we can contact them, we might have enough expertise to mount an effective response. Using Jason's communication system, Sarah began reaching out to the other civilian assets. The process was complicated by the need to verify their identities and convince them that the situation was real, but within 2 hours, she had made contact with 8 of the 12 marked individuals. The group included 2 cybersecurity analysts, a network infrastructure specialist, a power grid engineer, and 3 communications experts like herself. Working together through Jason's secure channels, they began coordinating a response to the ongoing attacks. Sarah found herself naturally taking on a leadership role, using her experience in client communications to keep the dispersed team organized and focused. For the first time since losing her job at Dataflow Securities, she felt truly essential to an important operation. The attackers are using a rotating series of proxy servers to mask their real location, reported David Chun, one of the cybersecurity analysts working for Portland. But I'm seeing patterns in their attack timing that suggest they're operating from a single command center. Maria Santos, the power grid engineer participating from Sacramento, provided critical intelligence about the electrical systems under attack. They're not trying to cause random blackouts. The sequence of targeted substations would create a cascading failure that could take months to repair. As Sarah coordinated the team's efforts, she began to understand the sophisticated nature of what they were facing. The attacks weren't just criminal activity or simple terrorism. They represented a coordinated attempt to cripple American infrastructure in a way that would have long-lasting strategic consequences. Working through the night, the Civilian Meridian team managed to identify and neutralize several key attack vectors. Sarah's role involved maintaining secure communications between team members while also coordinating with utility companies and emergency services to implement protective measures. By dawn, they had prevented the most serious damage, but the effort had revealed the full extent of the infiltration problem. The attackers had access to government response plans that were updated in real time, meaning the mole was actively monitoring and reporting on official cybersecurity efforts. Dr. Stevens, who had been monitoring government communications from the facility, brought sobering news. The official investigation into these attacks is being led by Deputy Director Harrison of the National Cybersecurity Center. Sarah looked up from her communications console. Why is that bad news? Because Deputy Director Harrison is one of the 3 names on Jason's list of suspected infiltrators. Agent Martinez replied grimly. The implications hit Sarah immediately. The person officially responsible for protecting America's cybersecurity infrastructure was potentially the same person helping foreign attackers breach that infrastructure. Colonel Patterson made a decision that would define the rest of the operation. We need to gather concrete evidence against Harrison before we can involve any other government agencies. And we need to do it while maintaining the fiction that this facility doesn't exist. Over the following days, Sarah found herself at the center of an operation far more complex than anything she had imagined. Using Jason's monitoring systems, the Civilian Meridian team tracked Deputy Director Harrison's activities while continuing to counter ongoing cyber attacks. The evidence they gathered was damning. Harrison was not only providing real-time intelligence to foreign attackers, but was also systematically undermining government cybersecurity responses to ensure that attacks succeeded. Sarah's background in corporate communications proved invaluable when it came to documenting and organizing the evidence in a way that could be presented to trustworthy government officials. She created detailed reports that traced the timeline of Harrison's betrayal and its impact on national security. The breakthrough came when David Chun, monitoring Harrison's private communications, discovered plans for a massive coordinated attack scheduled for the following week. The assault would target not just power grids, but also water treatment facilities, transportation systems, and financial networks across multiple states. This isn't just another cyber attack, Sarah realized as she reviewed the plans. This is preparation for a physical invasion. They're trying to create chaos that would prevent an effective military response. Dr. Stevens contacted her superiors using secure channels that bypassed Harrison's office entirely. Within hours, FBI and military intelligence teams were coordinating with the Civilian Meridian operation to prepare for the planned attacks. Sarah found herself briefing federal agents and military officers on the intelligence her team had gathered. The woman who had been told she wasn't essential to a private cybersecurity company was now providing critical intelligence to protect the entire country. The final confrontation came exactly 1 week after Sarah had first entered the underground facility. Harrison's coordinated attack began at midnight, but the Meridian team was ready. Working from the hidden command center, Sarah coordinated communications between military cyber warfare units, civilian infrastructure operators, and law enforcement agencies across the western United States. The attackers found their every move anticipated and countered. By dawn, the attack had been completely neutralized, and Harrison was in federal custody along with 3 other government officials who had been part of his network. Standing in the command center as morning light filtered down through the facility's concealed entrance, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 3 weeks ago, she had been unemployed and told that her skills were no longer needed in an automated world. Now she understood that human judgment, creativity, and the ability to build trust and coordinate complex operations were more essential than ever. The computers and automated systems were powerful tools, but they required human intelligence to use them effectively. Dr. Stevens approached Sarah with news that would shape her immediate future. The Department of Homeland Security wants to offer you a permanent position coordinating cybersecurity communications. The work would be similar to what you've been doing here, but with official government backing. Sarah looked at her tattoo, the geometric pattern that had seemed like such a simple decoration when she chose it in a Portland tattoo shop. Now she understood that Jason Reeves had seen something in her that even she hadn't recognized at the time. What about the other civilian assets? Sarah asked. They're all being offered positions appropriate to their skills, Colonel Patterson replied. Jason's backup network is being integrated into official government cybersecurity operations. Sarah considered the offer. The work would be challenging and important, but it would also mean leaving behind the quiet life she had planned in Seattle. Then she thought about the millions of people who had kept their electricity, clean water, and transportation systems because a small group of dedicated individuals had worked together to protect critical infrastructure. I accept, Sarah said, but I have one condition. What's that? Dr. Stevens asked. I want to make sure that no one is ever again told they're not essential just because their work involves human skills that can't be easily automated. The most important work often requires exactly the kind of judgment and creativity that only people can provide. 6 months later, Sarah stood in a new office in Washington, D.C., coordinating cybersecurity communications for the newly expanded Meridian program. Her tattoo had been professionally modified to include additional security features, but the basic geometric pattern remained the same. On her desk was a framed photograph of the civilian team that had worked together to stop Harrison's conspiracy. 11 ordinary people with specialized skills who had proved that being human wasn't a liability in an automated world, but rather the most essential qualification for protecting what mattered most. Sarah's phone rang, and she answered to find a familiar voice on the line. Ms. Martinez, this is Marcus from Dataflow Securities. We've been reviewing our personnel decisions from earlier this year, and we'd like to discuss bringing you back in a senior leadership role. Sarah smiled as she looked out her office window at the nation's capital. I appreciate the offer, Marcus, but I found a position where my skills are considered absolutely essential. After hanging up, Sarah returned to her work coordinating communications between cybersecurity teams across the country. The geometric lines on her wrist caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through her window, a permanent reminder that sometimes the most important things in life come disguised as random choices that turn out to be anything but random. She had learned that being essential wasn't about having the most advanced technical skills or the most impressive job title. It was about being able to see connections others missed, to build trust in difficult situations, and to coordinate human efforts in ways that no computer system could replicate. The tattoo that had started as a sister's dare had become a symbol of something much more important: the irreplaceable value of human judgment, creativity, and dedication in protecting the things that matter most to society. As Sarah prepared for her next coordination meeting, she reflected on the irony that had brought her to this point. Dataflow Securities had told her she wasn't essential because they thought automation could replace human communication skills. But In the most critical situation she had ever faced, it was precisely those human skills that had made the difference between success and catastrophe. Technology was a powerful tool, but it required human wisdom to use it effectively. Sarah's story had become proof that in an increasingly automated world, the most essential workers might be those who could combine technical knowledge with uniquely human abilities like judgment, creativity, and the capacity to inspire trust and cooperation in others. The woman who had been dismissed as non-essential had discovered that she was exactly the kind of person the world needed most. Patterson led the operation from second vehicle, while a third SUV carried additional equipment and communications gear. As they drove south through the Cascade Mountains, Dr. Stevens continued Sarah's crash course in operational security procedures. When we reach the coordinates, you'll need to approach the facility's access point first, Dr. Stevens explained. The tattoo scanning system will only respond to the specific pattern and proportions in your design. Sarah looked out at the dense forest passing by their windows. What if the facility is a trap? What if Jason Reeves was working for hostile actors when he gave me this tattoo? That's a risk we have to take, Agent Martinez said from the driver's seat. But our analysis suggests otherwise. Everything we know about Reeves indicates he was loyal to the Meridian mission. The coordinates led them to an area of national forest land that appeared completely undeveloped. They parked the vehicles at a defunct logging road and continued on foot through dense stands of Douglas fir and western hemlock. After hiking for nearly an hour, Agent Kim's GPS indicated they were approaching the target coordinates. But Sarah could see nothing except forest in every direction. "Are you sure we're in the right place?" she asked. Colonel Patterson consulted his own GPS device. "According to the coordinates from your tattoo, we should be within 50 meters of the facility." Dr. Stevens pulled out a tablet equipped with ground-penetrating radar. As she slowly swept the device back and forth, a pattern began to emerge on the screen. "There's definitely a structure here," she announced. "About 12 feet underground. It's much larger than I expected." Agent Martinez found what appeared to be a natural depression in the forest floor. But when he cleared away the fallen leaves and debris, he revealed a metal surface painted to look like earth and stones. "Camouflaged access hatch," he reported. "I need Sarah over here." Sarah approached the hidden hatch nervously. Agent Martinez had uncovered a small panel that contained what looked like a sophisticated scanner. "Place your left wrist against the reader," Dr. Stevens instructed. "The scanner should recognize the pattern and proportions of her tattoo." Sarah held her wrist against the cool metal surface. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, a series of lights began blinking on the panel, and she heard mechanical sounds from beneath the forest floor. "It's working," Colonel Patterson said as a section of ground began to rise, revealing an elevator platform large enough to accommodate their entire team. The elevator descended silently through what appeared to be solid rock. Sarah's ears popped from the pressure change as they went deeper underground than she had expected. When the doors opened, Sarah gasped. The facility was enormous, with corridors extending in multiple directions and high-tech equipment visible through glass-walled rooms. Emergency lighting provided dim illumination, but most of the facility appeared to be in standby mode. "This is incredible," Dr. Stevens murmured. Jason Reeves built an entire underground command center. As they explored the facility, Sarah began to understand the scope of what they had discovered. There were living quarters for at least 20 people, a communication center with equipment more advanced than anything she had seen at Dataflow Securities, and what appeared to be a computer server farm that hummed quietly in climate-controlled chambers. In the main command center, Agent Kim discovered a series of monitors that activated automatically when the team entered the room. A voice recording began playing from speakers mounted around the room. "If you're hearing this message, it means the Meridian backup protocol has been activated." Sarah recognized the voice from her brief interaction 2 years ago. It was Jason Reeves. The recording continued. "The primary Meridian team has been compromised, and standard communication channels are no longer secure. This facility contains backup data for all critical cybersecurity operations, as well as evidence of the infiltration that led to the team's capture. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The other Meridian operatives hadn't simply disappeared. They had been captured. I've identified 12 civilian assets with relevant skills and marked them with modified Meridian identifiers, Jason's recorded voice explained. These individuals can be activated if the backup facility is needed to continue operations. Dr. Stevens looked at Sarah with new understanding. You're not the only one. There are 11 other people walking around with tattoos like yours. On the main screen, a map appeared showing locations across the Pacific Northwest. 12 red dots marked cities from Vancouver, British Columbia, to San Francisco, California. Each civilian asset has been given coordinates to this facility and activation codes that will expire if not used within a specific time frame. Jason's voice continued. I've programmed the facility to send activation signals to all marked individuals if the primary team is compromised for more than 8 months. Colonel Patterson checked his watch. It's been exactly 8 months since the Meridian team disappeared. Sarah realized that her sudden contact by the supposed Federal Security Communications Division hadn't been a coincidence. The facility had automatically activated a protocol that brought her to the government's attention. As they explored further, Agent Martinez made a disturbing discovery in Jason's personal quarters. A collection of documents and photographs revealed the extent of the infiltration that had destroyed the original Meridian team. According to this information, the breach came from inside the government, Agent Martinez reported. Someone with high-level security clearance was feeding information to foreign intelligence services. Dr. Stevens studied the documents on Jason's desk. These names, 3 of them, are people who currently have access to our most sensitive cybersecurity operations. Sarah understood why Jason had created the backup network of civilians. He couldn't trust anyone within the government structure, so he had prepared a way to continue the mission outside official channels. In the communications center, Sarah discovered something that made her stomach drop. The equipment was actively monitoring government communications channels, and several screens showed real-time data about ongoing cyber attacks against American infrastructure. These attacks are happening right now, Sarah told the team. Power grids in 3 states are under assault, and someone is trying to compromise the air traffic control system for the entire West Coast. Dr. Stevens rushed to Sarah's side and saw the displays. This is exactly what the Meridian program was designed to prevent. Jason's system has been tracking and analyzing threats for the past 8 months. Colonel,